Welcome to Beyond Death, where we examine near-death experiences from people that say they have died, visited the other side, and came back. Today's NDE comes to us from Carrie G, who tells how a prayer led to an encounter with Jesus that changed his whole religious belief system. Let's get into it. I was visiting a college friend's home in Kansas. My friend's name was Joe. His father, Bill, was a lieutenant colonel. Joe was a Southern Baptist, and I was an agnostic. Joe asked me to pray with him before dinner while in his room. I told Joe that I could not, as I did not believe. Joe told me that my problem was that I was afraid to pray. Being 21 and feeling invincible, I told Joe that I accepted his dare, and I would pray. Joe closed his eyes and lowered his head, but I did neither. I kept my eyes open and said the following prayer: "If I have done anything wrong, I am truly sorry, and if there is a God, I want to know you." Immediately, something like scales fell from my eyes. The scales were gray in color and seemed to have the consistency to me of snake scales or the fragility of cigarette ashes to the human touch. I was amazed when they fell from my eyes and put out my hands almost in reflex in an effort to catch them. The scales fell into the palms of my hands, but I felt nothing. They had no weight. Suddenly, a brilliant crystalline white light appeared above me half the distance between where I was sitting and where Joe was sitting. Time seemed to stop. The amazing light flooded the entire room, and everything it shone upon became a bleached white color. The furnishings, the beds, wood surfaces, painted walls, everything except for the skin tones of Joe and me. Our skin tones of our bodies and faces were unaffected. The light seemed infinitely bright, brighter than a million suns, but its light did not hurt my eyes. I could look into the light without pain. The light seemed to be surrounding a being that I could not see. The being was occupying space, but not space like we normally think of space. It seemed to be there and everywhere at the same time. The being seemed to possess a kind of infinite depth to itself. Immediately, a strong but gentle voice spoke to me from the light, a voice heard not with my ears but with my mind. The being of light said, "Carrie, I love you exactly the way you are." The funny thing was that when I heard that voice, I recognized it. Somehow, I knew this being. He was like the best friend I always wanted and wished for, but did not know it. But upon hearing his voice, I knew him immediately. When the being of light first said this, I felt like the most loved human being of all time, the most favored of all human beings in the universe, past, present, or future. Yet at the same time, I knew this being loved everyone equally and just as infinitely as I felt right then. The being delighted in me and was completely focused on me. I was the center of its attention, yet somehow I knew everyone was at the center of its attention. When the being said those words to me, I knew it saw me as I was, faults and all, not just at that moment, but for all the moments of my life. I felt no shame, no judgment. In fact, it was so liberating to be known so perfectly, to be so wonderfully accepted, yet at the same time, not judged or condemned in the slightest way. I saw this encounter as my best chance to ask the being of light a question. I somehow knew this being was God, Jesus in fact. I had been struggling with homosexual thoughts since a teen and felt so ashamed, so I asked this being, "Is it all right to be gay?" I could not see the face of this being, but I can tell you I know it smiled and laughed. It did not laugh at me. It seemed to enjoy the fact that I asked my question, as if it knew how hard it was for me to ask it and how earnestly I sought the answer. It looked at me with such love. I felt this, but again I could not see its face. And then the loving being said, "Carrie, that is not the most important question." He said that with such gentleness. It clearly wanted to draw me into his life so that all my questions could be answered. Before I could ask, "What is the most important question?" it touched the top of my head. Again, I did not see this being touch me, but I know it did. When it touched my head, my whole body became translucent. I could see right through my body and my clothes, yet at the same time, I could make out every detail, even as I could see right through myself. Then, it poured something of itself in me, and a wonderful golden light poured into me. It was pure gold, a shimmering golden light. It was so beautiful. It was not like any ordinary light, as this light was alive, with pure joy, peace, goodness, life. I watched as the golden light filled up my feet, and then my legs, and then my whole body to the very top of my head. At that eternal moment, I felt so alive, so free, so loved, so joyful that I no longer wanted to be on this earth. I realized that if I wanted to, I could will myself to leave my body and enter that wonderful light, becoming one with that being of light. And so I did will that I leave my body, that the light instantly disappeared. Later, my friend Joe admitted that in his mind's eye, he also saw a being of light while praying, but as his eyes were closed, he did not see what I saw. A few days later, I met a friend who knew nothing of what had happened, and she immediately exclaimed, "Carrie, what happened? You are so bright. All of this happened years ago. The experience changed me. God is real to me." I eventually became a Catholic priest. One of the lingering effects of this experience is that I am able to see spirits of people for a few days after their deaths. I have many encounters with loved ones right after their deaths. I could see them, and they communicate to me their joy. One told me, "Carrie, it is so beautiful. I have felt the same unconditional love and exquisite joy that I felt with the being of light, Jesus, when they visit." As a Catholic priest, I have experienced loving spirits at the funerals of parishioners. Sometimes I can see their loved ones standing next to the bereaved, and I can feel their heavenly joy. Consequently, I have no fear of death, as I know that this loving being of light is real. As I say, I know that this being of light is Jesus. If we only knew how loved we are by God, and that we are truly beings of love, meant to love and receive love. Notes from Beyond Death. I have included a link to Carrie's NDE in the description for anyone that wants to take the time to read the question and answer portion he included directly following his experience. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on this one, and please be nice. I know this one goes against the beliefs of many of you, but that does not give you a license to come here handing out judgment. Let's leave that for God, like the Bible tells us to do. Until next time, stay blessed.